bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
The Cinik Radio Podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Here are your hosts, Cinik.
Hey, the facts are Spider-Man belongs in the MCU. Sony was delusional thinking they didn't need Marvel, and now he's back. And we, the fans, are 100% proudly responsible for that.
Agree?
As long as DC wants to make dark and gritty movies, they're going to lag behind Marvel in every category.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
This is the greatest show of all time.
Hey now, everyone, and this is episode 170 of the Cinik Radio Podcast, and I'm your co-host, Cinik, a man with more hats than friends. And joining me, as always, two guys who would never make it through the rigorous Baskin-Robbins screening process, Igri and Ryan. And on this week's show, we are reviewing the latest MCU offering, Ant-Man and The Wasp Quantumania. Marvel's been on a bit of a downtrend. Can Scott Lang and company turn it around? Ryan, let's talk about it.
Yeah, so for today, I'm going to do a little bit different as far as how we go about reviewing or how I go about asking questions. I just think it's a little more interesting for Ant-Man to take a little bit bigger picture view. So it will be more of an open discussion rather than like recapping like this scene led to that scene and that scene led to the other scene. Part because I just wasn't inspired by this movie, which I'm sure we're going to get to because I think we have some varying opinions on this. And part because I just think there are some ideas that are just interesting to maybe extrapolate a little bit on. So I guess the first question, because I think this goes part to my own dislike of this movie, is let's talk about the first two for a minute. So Cinik, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts overall on the first two movies? And then were you excited based on that leading up to this one?
Oh, absolutely. I love the first two movies, a lot because of Paul Rudd, a lot because it was set in San Francisco, a place that I just recently visited, a lot because, I like the, just the idea of the character being out there and fighting crime and being able to shrink and expand and the different views and viewpoints that we got from the movie that way.
And were you excited leading up to this one?
Yeah, absolutely I was, because, we're kicking off the Phase 5. I knew we were going to see Kang. I didn't know how much. So yeah, I was pretty excited but I'm excited for all the MCU offerings. As of late, it's been, slightly down, and I haven't been overly impressed with a lot of stuff they've been bringing out. But Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer, and you couldn't ask for a better group of actors to kind of work together. I knew Bill Murray was going to be in this one, so yeah, I was pretty excited about it.
Hey, what about you? What were your thoughts on the first two, and were you excited leading up to this one?
Well, the first one, was an absolute surprise because, part of the problem I have with the MCU right now is they're digging so deep for characters that there's still some very top tier characters that they aren't touching, that they have rights to. Especially now with Fantastic Four, X-Men, things like that. They have rights to characters that they aren't using yet. And I think it's actually kind of smart that they're not, because it's been so recent that those properties existed. But Ant-Man is very deep, as far as I'm concerned. Like, yes, he was an Avenger. Yes, he was places, but he was never, one of the front-facing guys. But they did the right thing in casting Paul Rudd. But how many Paul Rudds are there in the world, right? So they did a really good one. And I enjoyed the first one much more than the second one. And I think that's just the antagonist, the bad guy in the second one, like the stuff going on wasn't as good as the first one, quite honestly. Like, Darren Cross in the first one, he, trying to subvert and redo technology and stuff that Hank had done already, I just thought was a better story in general. But the second one was still good. You got to see, the Wasp get entered in and everything, and they worked well together and everything. But then I start thinking about, mass and physics and things like that. And even in this movie and everything, I start thinking about it because they're talking about, okay, you're so strong as Ant-Man because you go down to the size of an ant, but you retain all your strength and density of a human being. And I'm like, okay, well then when you're 60 feet tall, like you weigh 100 pounds, like you're nothing just a wind blows you away because you're just a kite. And so, like, I have to just kind of get past the whole plot armor thing of the stuff that's going on with the shows. But they're acted well. They're fun to watch. And I was excited because, you know, the stuff that the Kang variant was doing in the Loki show, I was interested. I was excited. And yeah, so like I liked the first two, the first better than the second. But I was excited to have this one come along with, you know, just like Joe said, just, you know, get the beginning of phase 5 and the introduction of at least a Kang.
Yeah, and I really liked the first two. I think I love the way that they played with perspective in the real world. And I think, I don't know how much was practical versus CGI, but it felt like there was a lot of practical effects thrown in, and it felt familiar, you know, like it felt like the real world. So when he was shrinking, it felt like him shrinking in a world that we exist in, you know, kind of had that Honey, I Shrunk the Kids vibe. So there's a bit of nostalgia there. And what scared me, and maybe this is, you know, part of kind of confirmation bias on my part, but what scared me was that this scene was so much CGI, so CGI heavy, and in a world that was not what we lived in, that I felt like it was maybe drifting away too far from the original movies. That and the fact that we didn't get is it Luis, the character? Yes.
Yeah.
Like the best part of the first two movies, we unfortunately would not get in this one, which I was really hoping we would get a cameo or something.
Well, taking away from the ensemble was a large reason why the first two movie worked.
Yeah.
I mean, Bobby Cavalli, Judy Greer, I mean, they were excellent in their roles. And then in the second one, Michael Pena just ruled both movies. And then we got Walton Goggins, who really, I mean, he can't stand toe to toe with Jonathan Majors in this movie as far as being the bad guy, but he was very hypnotic when he was on the screen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this movie, like, definitely kind of confirming my own issues. We go to the quantum realm almost off the bat. I mean, it's 10 minutes into this movie and we're in the quantum realm and we stay there. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, like, this becomes Star Wars, whether you like it or not. Like, this was a space opera. Feel free to disagree if you do. But Cinik, was that jarring for you, the fact that, like, it was basically space opera for the whole movie when we had two movies again that were kind of set in the real world?
Well, this is really my only complaint about the movie, is the fact that we basically watched a movie in a kaleidoscope. You know, the CGI was all over the place. They tried way too hard to make every single race look different and stand out. I mean, we had a fucking broccoli guy, for Christ's sakes. I mean, that outside of some problems with the villains, I mean, that was the only thing. I knew it was going to be super CGI heavy, but it wasn't garbage CGI like I was reading in the reviews that were slamming it. It was just over the top CGI, which, you know, it takes away from the experience. You're supposed to be looking at something that's based in realism, but when you overdo it like they overdid it, yeah, it's going to show that we're not watching a real thing.
What about you, Ig?
You know, you hit it right on the head. Like, even if you look at other things that are obviously not set on Earth, like with the Guardians of the Galaxy, it still seems real, right? If you look at the places that they go in the Guardians movie, it still seems like places that are lived in and real and not CGI, right? It seems like it could exist. And this place was missing a lot of that. So it just made it very cartoonish that way. And not that the CGI wasn't well done, but it was so dense and there was so much of it. Like, everything was CGI that they were around. I mean, it's almost like they were doing the thing that they do with the Mandalorian, where they create areas with a big screen and they just kind of walk around in it, but they were not places that looked like anybody could live there. Right. It's like almost like they were flying through space on an asteroid and like they were right next to it. And it was jarring. It was a little bit too much spectacle. And maybe they wanted to show like how much they can, how powerful the computers are getting now and how cool they can make things look. But, you know, we still need things to feel plausible. I mean, and that's one of the things that Marvel has done so well, is that even with these super powered beings running around doing things have a tendency to seem plausible.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think part of the issue, and like, okay, like I said, I think I like the first two in how they manage their, him in the real world. And I think he, the quantum realm is part of Ant-Man, so I shouldn't be that against it. But I think part of the issue was that it wasn't bad. Like there was never a point where I thought this CGI is terrible. I just thought it was just kind of boring. Like there was nothing about it. It felt just like something we would have gotten in almost, any other CGI heavy movie or film that we've seen. And so outside of the character design, which I did like, I thought some of the designs were actually interesting and unique. Broccoli Head obviously was done for a joke, but like there was some interesting character design that I did like in the movie. Beyond that, visually it just wasn't very interesting. It just seemed like something we've seen 1,000 times before. So it wasn't bad, but almost worse than that. It was just kind of, just kind of boring. So one of the things that worked in the first two movies was the humor. They were both very funny. I think a lot lies on Paul Rudd and his delivery, just how charming and affable he is, but also just he's got great comedic timing. And obviously we talked about Luis, but there was a lot of humor in this. Some may have worked, some didn't. Cinik, did the humor work for you?
I mean, it seemed derivative of the first two movies' humor. You're only going to go as far as Paul Rudd takes you in this movie. Other than the potential of Michael Douglas's character being a bit smug towards them all, like I'm smarter than you guys. Yeah, I mean, the opening montage about how great his life was going. And, I really enjoyed the humor in that, especially when the guy called him Spider-Man. I thought that was funny. You save the world and you still get confused with the other bug hero. And I enjoyed the kind of reality check in the end. They played off each other well. The humor overall, yeah, I mean, I got a couple laughs out of it. I mean, I can tell you that I laughed a hell of a lot more at Cocaine Bear than I did at Ant-Man. But yeah, I mean, it was still fun. Paul Rudd, he's good for a laugh or two in every single thing you see him in, and these movies are only going to go as far as he takes you.
Yeah, Ig, what'd you think of the humor in this?
It's just one of those things where sometimes I think they try way too hard to insert comedy in times when you don't necessarily need the comedy. And I think what worked best in the first two with this was the unexpected timing of the comedy. And some of these were forced, right? Especially like when you bring Bill Murray in and having him, like you're like pushing to get the comedy in there. You're pushing to make somebody laugh. And the MCU previously, and maybe it's just the new directors or something, because I think that Kevin Feige is letting some of the people a little bit looser on the leash than he used to, because he's got so many things he has to manage now. So because they've got all of the Disney Plus shows and the movies that are coming and everything, so he can't keep as tight a leash as he used to. So he's letting people do things, and they're like, well, this worked in this other movie, so let's up that again another 30% and see what we can do. Because they did the same thing in Thor: Love and Thunder, right? Let's force in some comedy rather than let things happen where it would be unexpected. Because just like Korg in the one before it's one of those things. Like Korg is funny because you didn't expect him to be funny. When you try and force it, it runs into a problem. And they're all able to be funny if you just let the funny happen. And it's one of those things where this is supposed to be an Avengers movie, right? It's supposed to be an MCU movie. It's supposed to be a lot of action. And then you have some moments where like something unexpected happens. And here's the funny, like, hey, anybody got any orange slices? That's unexpected funny. But when you keep replaying the same jokes over and over and again and forcing things so you can see it coming, you see the funny on its way, that's where you run into the problem. And that's what I think they did with this, is they were forcing it in too hard.
A lot of the humor centers around Mordok's the look of Mordok too. I mean, if you take that away, there isn't a lot of humor left in the script if we're not throwing rocks at poor Mordok.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I feel like there was some funny moments. Like the MODOK stuff was pretty funny at times. Some of the Bill Murray scene was great. I love the scene after Bill Murray where Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas are kind of not arguing, but like kind of going over their, them having needs, and Hope is kind of sitting there, kind of freaking out, like, I don't need to hear this from my parents. So there were some funny moments, but I felt like this movie it was just chock full of jokes. It was just like they were just gonna, like Ig said, it was just forced. And so there were so many that was like, we're just gonna throw a million jokes at the wall and see what lands. And so a lot of it didn't land, and so it became a little frustrating because every minute was a joke. And then I think tonally it was a shift, because then you get to like this big bad, and he's not funny. He's pretty serious, and it takes you out of it a little bit. And then speaking of which, so to me, like, by far the best part of the movie is Jonathan Majors as Kang. I think he plays this version of Kang with this kind of quiet rage that it was legitimately intimidating. So I guess first off, Cinik, what were your thoughts on Jonathan Majors' performance?
Well, this is my other problem in the movie, because, we kill him at the end, and I'm worried that this is the best version of Kang we're going to get. And I don't want any other version of Kang other than this one. We cut to an arena full of them, and, it's very gimmicky. There's a King Tut Kang. I don't want any of that. I want the Kang from the comic books, and I realized there was different versions of him in the comic book, but I want the one we had in this movie. And I kind of feel like he should have been more of a background villain and let MODOK do all the heavy lifting, sort of like what we got from Thanos in the Guardians movies. Mm-hmm. That's my only fear, is that we shot our load too early in this movie. Like, this Kang was perfect. This is the one I want to fight the Avengers. This is the one I want going forward. And I don't know if we're going to get that. And that does sincerely worry me.
Though I will say, I felt the same way about the Kang, that the version of him we got in Loki, in that like, he was so interesting in Loki that I was like, oh, that sucks that this guy got killed off. So I'm hopeful that he'll bring out, in the different versions of Kang, he brings out different performances that make us think, oh, I want this guy. Oh, I want that guy. So that I am hopeful, because he's already given us two versions of this character that I really like. So yeah, you're right. Like, that end seems kind of gimmicky, but hopefully we get some more. What about you? What are your thoughts initially on his performance?
Jonathan Majors is like showing up all over the place now, because like he's got Creed coming out, and he's the main antagonist in that. He's done Loki, he's done this, and everything he's done recently, he has been amazing, and he's shown the force that he is a great actor. And we know that Kang is going to persist, because they've announced titles of things like the Kang Dynasty. So we know Kang isn't gone. We're going to get some version of Kang. And you're right, Ryan. If they can do another thing, it's like, we thought we had what we wanted, and they're going to show us later that's like, haha, you thought so. Look at this guy. This one's even better than those ones. And I don't know how they do it, but I guess if they're going to get anyone to do it, Jonathan Majors would be the one that could probably pull it off, because he's shown that he can be very aloof and kind of funny, and then he's shown he can be very serious and very, very like driven toward his goal. And maybe the next one's just going to be very vengeful, because it's like, he understands something like, these were me, and you had no problem killing me twice. So now I'm going to enact vengeance for the rest of me's that exist, because now like the multiverse thing is becoming almost too thick.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they kind of pare back from that some and go back to like a 616 kind of thing, because if we start getting way too many heroes and too many things that only exist in this one or that one and this one, but we're trying to bring them all together, it's going to get very messy. And even the comics, for the most part, like all stay, like they venture off into ones, but they come back to 616 most of the time.
Yeah. Okay. Gave me lots of kind of Council of Rick vibes, especially that end credit scene.
Yeah.
So now obviously he's the big bad for Phase 5. And I think he perfect person to play this character, but especially with like the tonal issues with the heavy reliance on comedy, was this the right movie to introduce him? Is it diminishing returns that we're getting him? Okay, he was killed off twice now. Like, does this make sense that this is the movie we introduce him and show him to the world? Cinik?
No, not at all. He was the right villain in the wrong movie. Absolutely. 100%. I think I even read that before I went into it, and that kind of stuck in the back of my mind. It's, MODOK should have been the villain in this movie. They should have made him a little more evil and not turn in the end, and just have Kang in the background. I'll tell you this much, though. Thanos was an imposing bad guy. especially after we watched him just trash the Hulk, trash him in a one-on-one fight. Even in losing, Jonathan Majors is such a powerful force on the screen. Kang scared the shit out of me. I'm afraid Kang's going to come to my house and eat all my peanut butter cup. This guy's a bad dude. Yeah. So I'll tell you, even though he's 0 for 2 in the Marvel arena, I still I think he's going to be one of the best villains to date in any of these movies. But
to your point, it's like maybe we should have kept, maybe this version of him should have been saved, because he was, like you said, he's legitimately terrifying. I was scared, and I was like the whole until he loses, I thought he's gonna kill them. This is the guy, it's like, have I killed you before? And just saying it so common, just the way he talked about his conquests. This is a guy that is not to be trifled with. So it's kind of like that he went down so easily is a little frustrating, especially because with such a powerhouse performance.
Well, and we need to leave a trail of bodies in these movies. Yeah. And I mean, that means we're going to lose characters that we love. But what was her name? Sylvie in Loki?
Yeah.
He killed her. We should have lost somebody in the Ant-Man immediate family in this movie. The consequences need to be real. Yeah. We kind of retconned even what happened in Endgame, even though they said they wouldn't. And in order for these bad guys to land the way they need to, we need to start killing some heroes off.
Yeah. No, I would agree. And also, I guess the other interesting thing with him as a villain is Marvel has done a good job recently of really giving their villains some making them sympathetic. Did you feel that with Kang? Did you feel like, okay, in some way, shape, or form, I can identify with him. I can understand why he's doing. I may not agree with him, but I can understand why he's doing what he's doing. Your thoughts?
No, because most of the villains, I mean, whether it be Killmonger or whether it be Vulture, they had motives that were based in humanity. I want to free my people. I want to make good for my family. Kang's is domination. So that's not something that the everyday person is going to be able to identify with, even though he's trying to remotely save this universe or whatever universe that one particular one was from. We as moviegoers, we're not really going to be able to connect with that because we're worried about getting our taxes right. We're worried about, making sure the dog gets out before it makes a mess on the carpet. We're not worried about big picture situations like that.
Yeah. So one of the stronger points actually in the movie, as I mentioned, obviously we had a great performance from Jonathan Majors, but aside from Jonathan Majors, Ig, is there a performance that stands out to you or something that you really enjoyed?
Always Paul Rudd. I mean, he is Ant-Man, and he does such a good job with the role. And if anybody's comedy worked more than anybody else's, it would have been Paul Rudd's. And quite honestly, I mean, he's a comedic actor, but he's not a comedian. But he just has a certain way about him. Whenever he goes on late night talk shows and brings on that Mac and Me clip, he does it all the time, but it's still funny every time he does it. And he just has the right amount of timing and the right amount of charm that just makes you like him, that when he does some of the things, it's funny. So there's a lot of great actors because Michael Douglas has been around forever and he's done a lot of great things and he's good in this, but he's not the focus, and that's okay. One of the things I didn't like is that the Ant-Man movies are now 3 for 3 on getting a new Cassie every movie. and in a series where they bring people back so many times, you get cameos of people that were in before there was even an MCU, with Abomination. There was no real MCU at that time when the Incredible Hulk came out, but then they bring back the Abomination and the right actor that played him. And we can't get the same Cassie from Endgame.
Yeah.
I know she won, and I guess she put up some tweet or something like this. She had found out basically when they put up the first trailer for the film that she wasn't in it. That's how she knew. They don't even give you a call.
Well, I mean, this role did require a lot more heavy lifting, a lot more dialogue, comedic timing, some action sequences. So I understand that, maybe they went in a different route with it. But at the same time, let her know that she won't be back. I mean, hell, the Ravens let Trent Dilfer know a week after the Super Bowl they weren't bringing him back.
Yeah. So, Cinik, what about you? What was a standout performance for you besides Majors?
I mean, I loved Michael Douglas in this. He had some great moments, some very Hank Pym moments. And I liked Michelle Pfeiffer, even though she annoyed the hell out of me at points. Like, she looks like she's ready to get in there and battle it out as an adventure, even though she was dishonest about every single thing that happened in the quantum realm, and that all could have been avoided if she would have just told people. She's kind of like the ex-girlfriend, that changes her name on Facebook as many times as Facebook will allow you, because she's shady as fuck.
Yeah. Oh yeah, were you gonna say anything else?
I'm done.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was gonna say, like, she's so interestingly, it's like it was almost more her movie than Scott Lang. Like, I think, yeah, like I think outside of the fact that she could have saved this entire movie by just being honest, and I don't know why it wasn't clear what was so horrible that she couldn't talk about it.
I said that during the movie. It was like, she acted as if she was an accomplice to him conquering. Yeah. Where she had just got kind of rubed and helped him fix his ship and got his armor and his weapons back. Yeah. But she didn't help. I mean, ultimately she did the right thing by not allowing him to escape the quantum realm. Yeah. So I don't understand what the mark of shame was about, unless she didn't want to talk about her love affairs.
Yeah, no, it was really weird. But otherwise it was more her movie. And in fact, like, it's Ant-Man and the Wasp, and the other Wasp, Hope Van Dyne, gets completely shafted. Like, Evangeline Lilly has nothing to do in this movie. I swear, like, if she has 10 lines of dialogue, I would be shocked. Like, she's really kind of sidelined. That was one of the more surprising things, but by extension, Michelle Pfeiffer gets a lot to work with, so that was fun. Like, it was fun to watch her, and I think she did a great job. And I think there was a lot of like MODOK was fun, and there was a bunch. Michael Douglas is having fun. Bill Murray, for like the 10 seconds he's in it, is hilarious. So I did like, there was a lot of side character. A lot of the side characters were good. Like William Jackson Harper and David Desmalchin are in it briefly, and they're both really good and funny. So it definitely has its performances that I did enjoy. So it's kind of one of the better things, in spite of kind of the crappy CGI that did work. So Cinik, give me your MVP, favorite moment, final thoughts, and rating.
My MVP of the movie has to be Jonathan Majors. I mean, it's the obvious low-hanging fruit, but he carried the movie. My favorite moment was Cassie telling MODOK it's never too late to stop being a dick, because honestly, folks, it really is never too late to stop being a dick. And my rating for the film, we're doing that now, right?
Yep. Yeah. Final thoughts and rating. Yep.
Okay. My rating for the film was probably, I'd say a 7. Overall, despite its flaws, I like the movie. I mean, Phase 5 isn't looking so promising so far, but I have to question whether Marvel's golden age is over. I mean, can the Guardians save us? It was a bit frustrating at times that Janet wouldn't tell the truth about everything that happened in the quantum realm, but she did give a great performance. My undying love for Paul Rudd is what saved the movie. I walked in and I didn't expect a lot from it. And I think that's the problem, is that we take this stuff way too seriously, and really all at the end of the day, it's a way to kill 2 hours. My setting was the only real issue. Like I said, it was very CGI heavy, but Jonathan Majors' Kang was great. And I would have appreciated it more. Like I said if he was more of a background villain like Thanos. I really hope we see something similar to this version of Kang going forward.
Ig, how about you? MVP, favorite moment, thoughts, and rating.
So I'm a Paul Rudd stan. Like I love most of the things he's done. He's just somebody that, like, if Paul Rudd's in a movie, I'll probably watch the movie, even if it's a romantic comedy or something like that, because he's got that kind of charisma that I like to watch. So, I mean, I'm not going to go the same low-hanging fruit that Cinik did, because Jonathan Majors is showing up everywhere now. He's the new Giancarlo Esposito, right? If he shows up in your movie, it's probably going to be okay. You're probably going to make money. But Paul Rudd is Ant-Man. And I love Paul Rudd. I love, his timing, as much comedy that failed in this, his doesn't fail nearly at any rate that anybody else does, because he's just that guy. He's got that kind of timing. He's kind of like Robin Williams that way, but not as manic. But it's just one of those things that, they're both geniuses and great at what they do. So I really enjoyed that. Favorite scene, I probably, with the millions of Ant-Men running around and one growing up and everything, and you were able to see like which one was our central Ant-Man, because he never wanted to put his helmet back on. He's just running through stuff. I thought it was really well done, really weird, but it was also one of my most disappointing parts. I'm like, oh, we're going to replay that thing from Wanda where it turns into ribbons. It's like, hey, is that a new CGI trick that somebody learned and he gets to show it off in every movie? Because that part of that scene I didn't like, but the rest of the scene I thought was really amazing and powerful, and watching him get rescued at the end when he was trying so hard. And I just like how they put that together. The composition was really, really well done, and it was very exciting to watch. Overall, I think it was an okay movie, and I'm thinking back to some of the early MCU movies in each phase, right? You know, I mean, the original Captain America movie in that phase was okay. It wasn't great. It was okay. And if you look at, you know, like the first Thor movie, or even the second Thor movie was way worse than that, but it's still worth watching. And early phase movies, when you're starting to get characters, are often not all that great. You know, I mean, the first Guardians movie showing Thanos, that's an exception, not the rule. So I'm not as concerned about the whole phase of Marvel stuff. I think they've got some potential to do some really good things. I am concerned about how deep they're going with the characters, like the Marvels coming up, like Captain Marvel is big enough, but Miss Marvel and Spectrum and things that seems a little deep for me. And I hope that they somehow come up with a great story and are able to do something amazing to make it work. But I'm not as concerned about the phase for that. I guess for me, I'm probably right where Cinik is, where I'm at a 7 for this. It was okay. It's a good popcorn movie. It's a lot of fun to go watch. It's not, like you said, Ryan, all the comedy doesn't hit. And it's uncommon for a Paul Rudd Marvel movie to not have 90% or more of the comedy hit. But enough of it hit that it was still fun to be there. The CGI is a little too much, but you know, hopefully they realize that and they don't spend everywhere in somewhere that's not realistic anymore.
So I'm going to say my MVP, it's got to be Jonathan Majors. I think it's hard not to go with him. I think, you know, his performance is phenomenal in this, and I think it just is jarring because it's such a serious performance, and then you combine that with the insane humor that it was a little weird. My favorite moment, as I alluded to before, was, you know, that's the scene with Bill Murray and Janet and Hank was great, and then just that scene afterwards where they're kind of going back and forth and talking about, you know, she's like, well, you know, I had needs, and he's like, oh yeah, well, I had somebody, and Hope is kind of cringing in the corner. I thought that was one of the moments that landed comedically for me, so I would go with that. I will say, though, again, going back to Jonathan Majors, anytime he was on the screen, I was like fully focused. I feel like everybody had that feeling of he was magnetic. So I almost want to say anytime he was on the screen was my favorite moment too, just because he was so magnetic. But I'll go with that as my favorite scene. Yeah, I did not like the movie. I think outside of Jonathan Majors and a couple of scenes of the humor just didn't work, and especially considering what I liked about the previous movies, I just had a hard time getting into this. It felt like, you know, it felt like a bad space opera. Like, it felt like bad Star Wars, down to like there being sand people and sand dunes and like people separated and rescuing someone from a prison. It was just like nope. There were a lot of notes that were like, oh, this is a lot like Star Wars. But it didn't work. Except, and then including kind of prequel era CGI that, you know, was not bad but just kind of boring. So it didn't work for me. I'm hopeful, again, with Jonathan Majors' performance, that we're going to see, you know, a villain in Phase 5 that brings everybody together. I'm pretty sure this is the last Ant-Man movie for a while, if not ever. And I don't know that we need more Ant-Man movies at this point. But yeah, for me overall, I just thought it was boring. And honestly, I'm going to give it a way lower than you guys, a 5.5.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, I think we've done everything we can do with these characters. So, yeah, if they don't do another Ant-Man, I'm not super disappointed. Yeah. Throw all of them in the Avengers, and I'm fine. Yeah. Folks, we literally have so much content coming up that we're going to have to double and triple up. I mean, we're going to be back in a few minutes with some Last of Us, but next week we have Last of Us, we have Mandalorian, and we have Creed. So it's going to be some jam-packed episodes, if not multiple episodes at the same time. And we may have a special guest for Creed 3 since IG might be away, so I don't know. We'll see how that works out. I've been Cinik. That's been Ryan and IG. Thanks for joining us, and you can find us on all the socials at Cinik Radio. Any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, or complaints about my inability to pronounce or read, you can find us at cinicradio@gmail.com. So we'll see you next time, and until next time,
don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at cinicradio.com. Available for download on iTunes.